Welcome to the PEHP Wellness Webinar for November 2019. Today we're going to be talking about time management and a few tips to help you manage your day and hopefully get more done. So I want to ask you, why are you here today? Are there some goals you want to accomplish? Are there some things you have specifically in mind that you'd like to improve with your workflow, organization, or how you manage your time? Perhaps you fall into one of these categories. You want to get more out of your time. You feel like you're an efficient swimmer. You just want to learn how to go faster and farther. Maybe you want to get more done throughout the day. Okay, maybe you feel like you are in the deep end at times and it's hard to swim. And maybe you are an efficient swimmer and you've got extra time and you want to know what to do with that. Today we're going to talk about the pain when you do not manage your time, some of the problems that are associated with time management, and some possible solutions that you might be able to utilize going forward in your workday. And hopefully you can develop a plan and some strategies that you can put into practice right away. Let's talk about the pain. I think we've all been familiar at one time of our life or another, feeling overwhelmed with our work duties or perhaps having too much on our plate. You may feel stress, anxiety, your productivity may be lacking, your motivation may be lacking, and you may feel overwhelmed. Now, to start off, I want to talk about the history of time, because this really is a man-made concept. The idea of hours and minutes are really, our own making. But when we really think about time, what we're really talking about is light. And so our days used to revolve around the sun, because that was when we could be outside and get things done. We depended upon that light. And so when the sun would go down, usually our work days would be over. Now, as time has progressed and our work has evolved as well, so has our ability to track time. We're no longer dependent on the sun, and we created our own sun through fire and later on through electricity. And this is how we've been able to stretch our days and efficiently track our time and ultimately come to the measurements of minutes and hours because we're no longer dependent on sunrise and sunset. Now, some other things have changed as well. Okay, our work environments have changed. The tools that we use have changed. We're more distracted than ever in our lives. A statistic has shown that we are distracted every 20 minutes, either with our phones, with emails, with notifications. Every 20 minutes, something's going off. And that has to be accounted for. This is the new world that we live in. And just as a side note, the average adult attention span nowadays is about 15 minutes. And another little point that I researched was it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to fully return to complete focus on a task. So if we're being distracted every 20 minutes and we can only focus for 15 and it takes 15 to 20 to get back on track, we're in trouble here. The other thing that has changed with our world is this idea of downtime. Okay, we have machines, we have software, we have automated systems, and we do have this downtime, especially on the weekends or on the evenings perhaps, and how to manage that time, this kind of new idea that we've experienced the last century, is important as well. Okay, turning your attention to how the machines that we use have changed. We all started out on pen and paper, and then we transitioned to typewriters. And when you're using a typewriter, you can only do one document at a time. And quickly, as computers enter our workflow, we go from one document at a time to one program at a time to multiple programs at a time. And as these tools have changed, okay, so has the work environment. And so not only are they chained to our desk, but now we're expected to take them with us with laptops and smartphones. Okay, the work never ends. And so it can be hard to manage your time if you can't get a break from your actual work. Just a fun little graphic here. This kind of shows over the years how your work environment has changed. And everyone gets excited with the new computer, but really, your productivity is going to go up. And with the more screens, you're expected to do more, to task manage, to multitask, and to do things more efficiently than you did in the past. Another quick graphic here that's interesting. On average, a person has about 29,000 days in their life. It's about 80 years. And as we go through this list, you can just see how quickly that time gets chipped away. We sleep an average of a third of our life. We work about 13 years of our life. We watch TV for about 12 years of our life. Socializing, about 11 years. Having fun, 5 years. And we spend close to 3,000 days just eating food. Okay, social media and other interactions, okay, close to 2,000 days. And what's left? About a year. You got 365 days left. So it is really important to manage your time because it's going to be taken from you very quickly if you don't keep track of it. All right. So what are some of the problems associated with time management if we drill down? Okay, because we no longer are chasing the sun. Okay, we have these longer work days and we've got things to do. So you may experience a few of these, and it might be good to just jot down which of these you experience so you can identify some solutions. So the first that we experience quite often is a lack of motivation, or perhaps our emotions get in the way, like fear, being organized, planning. Okay, if you've got a lot of things to do, you also have to prioritize those projects. We're constantly distracted, like we mentioned. Expectations can be high, and maybe you're a yes person. You tell everyone that you'll do everything for them. You have a hard time saying no. Okay, this chart drills down into some of the deeper problems that you might experience. So just take a second and reference this. If you notice you fall into one of these areas, perhaps identify with these deeper issues here. If you struggle with motivation, okay, maybe getting started, returning to the task, or finishing the task is the deeper issue. If you tend to overcommit, okay, maybe there's a fear of disappointing others. Okay, you want to please everyone. It's hard to say no. It's be good to sit with some of these deeper reasons why it's hard to prioritize your time. A few things to think about here as far as solutions go. And these will be things we talk about today. Seeking progress through subtraction, and that is simplifying things. Okay, the Eisenhower matrix, the POMODORO technique, time blocking, time budgeting, and how to work smarter, not harder. And then we'll finally end with tips for breaks and also napping. There's some interesting research on how to take an effective nap because I think we're all doing it wrong. We'll start off here with a video, okay, with a couple tips here.
Pretty well known for this. I've taught it to a lot of people who attend my annual event, the Titan Summit, and they've used this one tool alone to create vast amounts of productivity that have scaled their businesses, scaled their impact on the world, and created world-class lifestyles. So I really invite you to pay even more attention to the 99-1 rule. And what's that all about? It's pretty simple, like any great rule. For the next 90 days, spend the first 90 minutes of your workday on your single most important opportunity to move the needle in your industry. And I'll repeat that again with great respect because it's so important, I believe, to your productivity. The 90-90-1 rule is simply for the next 90 days, spend the first 90 minutes of your workday on your single most game-changing opportunity. Because what happens? A lot of us get to work and we spend our best hours on our least important activities. We get to work and we start checking our social feed. We get to work and we check our text. We get to work and we chit-chat at the water cooler about the latest TV show that we watched last night. And research has shown that the morning hours are when you have the most focus, when you have the most energy, and when you have the most willpower. And so you want to use that first 90 minutes, that is game time. That's show time. The second piece of technology to create exponential productivity is what I call tight bubbles of total focus. Your environment is so important. And if you look at B performers or C producers, they really don't pay a lot of attention to their environment. And so they get very distracted. There's lots of noises, their phones are going off, maybe there's news in the background, maybe there's messy environments all around them, maybe there's toxic people. What I'm suggesting to you as the second piece of technology to really 100 times your productivity is this. Install environments of tight bubbles of total focus. The way I run my work life, on certain days, I am very hard to reach. And I challenge you with great love and respect, be very hard to reach during key times of your week. I mean, I see a lot of people, and it's not judging them, it's just observing them. Every time their phone rings, they check it. Or they have, these loud notifications. So they're constantly being distracted. And we know what the research says. The research says we spend 2.1 hours a day in distraction. And it takes 21 minutes to refocus your focus after you've been distracted. So if you are being distracted by notifications, checking your phone, checking your Twitter feed, checking your Facebook feed, looking on Instagram, checking all the different platforms, that is going to destroy your focus. So the second piece of technology is create these tight bubbles of total focus. And the way I do it is I have certain days that I label as creative days. And on those creative days, I actually go device free. And on those days, I'm very hard to find. And on those days, I'm in total solitude. And on those days, I go to certain places. I call them my Menlo labs, just like Edison had his Menlo lab. And these places are very minimalist. And there's no one there. And that's where I do my best work. So install these tight bubbles of total focus and create these Menlo labs where you're completely distraction free. And then you will find your brain will drop from the beta state into the alpha state, where you will do your best work and get your best ideas. The next piece of technology that will help you create exponential productivity in your
All right. Another thing we can talk about as well is this slide here. This is the Pareto principle, or also referred to as the 80-20 principle. Okay, this is a simple concept, but if you think about your day, what you actually do and what ends up in actual results is interesting. You may feel very busy, but what you actually work on may not account for what moves the mark. And so it's important to take inventory of the things you do throughout the day and what actually helps you find progress. I think we've all been bombarded by emails and phone calls, and you can fill your day with that kind of communication, but is it really resulting into the type of progress you want to see in your projects? It's interesting to just take an inventory and ask yourself, what throughout the day am I doing that makes a difference? And identify that as your 20% and make sure that that gets done and prioritized. Don't confuse being busy with being efficient. All right, this next concept here, progress through subtraction. Like I mentioned before, it's important to take inventory of what you're doing and ask yourself, can this be automated? Okay, can I create a template? Can I create an email draft that I can take from? Can I create a document? Can I create a workflow? Can I delegate this project? Okay, is this fall in my wheelhouse, or is there someone else that can help me better with this? Another concept to think about too is, can you delegate this to yourself at another time or reschedule it? And then finally, can I eliminate it? Am I really seeing progress with this type of work? Can it be phased out? Can we evolve into something else? Or frankly, does it still need to be done? Is it making a difference? So the inventory I mentioned can be done with this Eisenhower decision matrix. You can see here that all your tasks fall into 4 boxes. And when you put it in these 4 boxes, this will tell you what to ultimately do. And so if something is urgent and important and falls in that top left category, obviously you've got to do it right away. These are tasks that are due immediately extremely important. Something's broken, something's on fire. Not all of your work is going to fall into this category, but it's important to make room for these type of things if they do fall into your lap, obviously. Now, most of our work will be important, but it won't be urgent, and so it's in this decide category. Now, it's important to put that somewhere. Most people operate on this urgent and important, and they like to put out fires, but they don't have a system to address the non-urgent tasks. And it's important to have a schedule, and we'll talk about time blocking and things like that. But I strongly believe in scheduling everything. Everything that you need to do, give it a spot to live. Otherwise, it's going to sneak up on you or you'll forget about it. We've got this delegate category. Okay, delegate it to yourself at another time. It's important, but it's not urgent. And then, okay, can it be eliminated? It's not urgent. It's not important. Okay. This next concept is called the POMODORO technique. Okay, and this is something to set up and practice with time. I know a lot of people who are extremely efficient doing work this way. Now, how it works is you pick a set amount of time, okay, perhaps 25 minutes, and you work for 25 minutes, and then you take a short break for 5 minutes. Now, this is called one POMODORO, or one set. And then you do 4 sets or 5 sets, okay, and then you take a longer break, perhaps 15 minutes. Okay, and so you get used to working in chunks of time, and you start to feel pretty efficient because that timer is always going, and you start to realize how much you can accomplish in 25 minutes. Now, this follows another principle that says, your task expands to the time allotted to it. So if you've given yourself a 2-hour window to do something, it's probably going to take you 2 hours. Or if a project is due in a month, it's probably going to take you the full month to do it. And so this gets you used to working in chunks of time and becoming extremely efficient. And you might be surprised with what you can do in 25 minutes. Or if you choose to, do 55-minute intervals, how extremely efficient you can be in getting things done in 1 hour chunks of time. Like I said, though, you've got to stick with it. You've got to practice it. And the breaks are really important. You do need to step away and not cheat, not go over that time. Okay, here's a quick little video that Tim Ferriss provides for us. He talks about this concept of batching and how to organize tasks that are similar so that we're not constantly starting and stopping. We can put these tasks together and do them when it makes sense.
One of the concepts, one of the strategies that I'm most commonly asked about from the 4-Hour Workweek is batching. There are many, many, many finer points to this. And quite aside from, of course, 80-20, delegating, outsourcing, Parkinson's Law, batching comes up again and again and again. So what is batching? To explain it in simplest terms, we can talk about laundry. All right, so you wouldn't do your laundry every time you have a new pair of dirty socks. You wait for a certain critical mass of dirty laundry to accumulate, and then you do the laundry. Why? Same with the post office. If you have many different types of mail that are going to come together that you need to mail, you're going to wait for a certain critical mass as opposed to just going there for every single letter, because there's a setup cost. There is a task switching cost, getting in the car, driving there, spending the gas, spending the time, laundry, putting it all together, detergent, and so on. Right? So the time and labor involved in doing 1 letter or 20 or 1 pair of socks or an entire basket of clothing is the same. And you want to be both effective and efficient with your allocation of resources, i.e. time. If you apply those to business, you can apply them in 1,000,001 different ways. And I'll give you a few examples. One of the most common, I suppose, directional questions or specifics that I'm asked about is frequency. Well, do I batch on a daily basis? Do I batch on a weekly basis? Do I batch on a monthly or quarterly basis? And the answer is I do all of those things. But you don't have to try it all at once. And I would not encourage you to do that. I would encourage you to perhaps try 1 or 2 approaches and see what works for you. This is a very personal set of techniques. You develop a portfolio that works for yourself. Let me tell you a few things that I and others do. For instance, you might decide that on a given day, from the time you wake up until lunch is your primary creation period. This could be writing, it could be recording, it could be anything that is proactively creative and synthesis. Then, once you have lunch, you are permitted to do administrative tasks, phone calls, email, triage, calendaring, and so on. I do this quite a lot, particularly from Tuesday to Thursday on certain weeks. On a weekly basis, I know the CEO of a very well-known startup, pretty much everyone watching this would know this company, and instead of batching on a daily basis, looking at his week, Monday to Friday, he might have day 1, administrative tasks, day 2, HR hiring, day 3, product, day 4, marketing. And on each of those days, he will focus on thematically or categorically those types of tasks. That is yet another approach. And very commonly, I will batch phone calls on Mondays and Fridays. And I would say even broadly speaking, this is voice-related tasks. So I will have phone calls and podcast recording on Mondays and Fridays. And this helps to prevent also interruptions and task switching that can result if you have miscellaneous phone calls and podcasts scattered throughout the week. It makes it very difficult to do deep work on anything that might require 3 to 5 hours of uninterrupted time. On a quarterly basis, you could look at batch producing or completing certain types of normally scattered activities. For instance, I am recording this video right now during a content generation week, where a week is blocked out once per quarter to focus on answering common questions that all of you or my readers or listeners have asked, and so on and so forth.
All right, so I alluded to this concept of time blocking. Now, how this works, okay, is give yourself a part of your day to do specific tasks. And this might be email, this might be phone calls. Now, there might be better days and better times of days to do specific tasks. For instance, if you've got some energy in the morning and you like to tackle the data, okay, that might be a good time to do those type of projects and give yourself a window that you can schedule these things into. Another thing that you can do is, if you're going to do phone calls, those are probably going to be better later on in the day when people are settled into work or when they're available, and give yourself a time to accomplish that. Now, once again, like all these techniques, you're going to have to keep your boundaries with this. Stay within your time blocks and also protect it. People are going to come in and they're going to want you to do projects. They're going to want to give you deadlines, and within reason, try to have them respect your schedule and give them those availabilities that can work for them. Give them a window of time. Okay, this next concept, try versus TRI. We all know when we try to do something, it usually isn't accomplished. And TRI tells us to do it a little bit different. So T is, what time are you going to do it? Okay, pick a spot in your calendar. R is for reminder. So you're going to be busy, you're going to forget, and so make sure you set a reminder a day, a week, an hour before so that you know to do this thing. And then I is for ingredient. So what would you need to get started? Or when that reminder goes off, what do you need available to you to get going right away on that project? If you start thinking in this way, it can help you accomplish a lot more because you've broken it down into those steps. Okay, and Parkinson's law is that principle I mentioned. Your tasks expands to the time allotted to it. And so you'll be surprised how much how much time can take up in emailing and calling people if you let it take over your day. But if you give it a chunk of time that's available, you can put it in that window and it can stay there. This can also be something that you communicate to your coworkers as well. Here's my office hours. Here's time for emails. Here's time for collaboration. Just give that availability to them. Okay, here's an example of a schedule where someone has practiced time blocking and everything's organized, and you can notice that they even have lunch breaks on there. Now, that's important to block out because you should be taking a lunch break It's great for your body, your mind, your brain. But these can also be expansion points, where if you need something that's urgent and important, you can plug those into those lunch times. Okay, I call these pockets or expansions, where life is going to shift and you're going to need to do something. Those times that are already blocked out, you can expand into those, okay, because you've already protected it. All right, so this concept of time budgeting is simple, okay, and it might be a new concept to you. Let's say you've got a project that you want to work on that's going to take a significant amount of time. Let's say reading a book, researching, working on a project, and you know it's going to take a large amount of your schedule. Now, something to perhaps consider is breaking that up into chunks. And so if I want to read a book, instead of sitting down and devoting several hours to finishing that book, maybe I budget 15 minutes a day of my time to read that book. And over the course of a year or even, several weeks or months, you can get that larger task done if you just chip away at it. And so some of your tasks and projects may not fall into this, but you might just think, okay, I've got some bigger tasks. Can I just devote 30 minutes to it? And over the course of weeks and months, wow, I've devoted hours and days to this and I've accomplished a lot. All right, I think we're all familiar with this work smarter, not harder technique, okay, this concept. And what I'll allude to next going forward is the type of work that you work on needs to relate to the time of day when you work on it. Okay, in other words, when you work is just as important as why you're doing it. And I think that we forget about that. I've got a video here coming up that Dan Pink has created. He's got a great book called When, and he goes into all the research of why we sleep the way we do, also when the best time to work, why we should take breaks, when to take those breaks, and how our body and brains work. I don't think we consider this enough. And it's important just to pause and ask yourself, when would be the best time to do this? And not just work late into the night or, hit a project hard in the morning just because it's urgent. There might be better times of the day to put these in. We'll also talk about exercise and breaks here. Okay. So as
Perfect timing. We spoke earlier with best-selling author Daniel Pink. His new book is out in early January. It's called When: The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing. You say this is not a how-to book, but a when-to book. Tell people what that means.
Well, we tend to think that timing is an art. We make our decisions about when to do things based on gut instinct and intuition. But timing is actually a science. Across multiple disciplines, there's a huge body of research showing us how to make systematically better, evidence-based decisions about when to do things. And it turns out they have a material effect on our well-being, on our productivity, on our performance, on our creativity, on our health, many, many domains of life.
What I love is also the way in which it's not just, are you a morning person or an evening person, although you have a great explanation and description and a little test on how you can figure out who you are in that group, but it's also when you choose to do certain kinds of thinking, like creative thinking versus, explain that for people.
Absolutely. Well, what a whole range of scientists have found is that the day has a hidden pattern. It's basically a peak, a trough, and a rebound. Now, most of us proceed through the day in that order: peak, trough, rebound. And it turns out we're better off doing analytic work during the peak, which for most of us is the morning. The trough is not good for anything. It's actually a danger zone in many ways. We're better off doing our administrative stuff during the trough. But then during the recovery, it turns out we're better at more creative tasks, tasks that require a little bit more looseness rather than that heads down, locked in approach.
And is that's when the flashes of insight come?
Often, because when we're at our peak, we're very vigilant, right? We're able to keep out distractions. That's a feature when you're doing the analytic work. But when you're doing creative work, you actually want a little bit more looseness. You want to let a few distractions in so to mix up the soup a little bit. And so during the recovery period, which again for most of us is the late afternoon, early evening, we do better on what are called insight tasks.
has human history fouled us up by, which is to say, we needed to create time and have watches and hours so we would know when the bus arrives. But did we figure out a system that's basically always fighting with our own natural rhythms?
It's a really, really interesting question because one of the things that I discovered researching time itself is that a lot of things that we think of as natural are completely human inventions designed to corral time. So an hour has no natural substance to it. A minute doesn't have any natural substance to it. Certainly a year does because the planet goes around. A day does because the planet spins on its axis. But beyond that, we're always trying to corral time. And it's very hard to do, and time is a very elusive subject. And one of the things that's happened is that I think as a consequence, when we think about our own performance, we focus on what we're going to do. We focus on often how we're going to do it. We're focused on who we're going to do it with. But we put when questions over there at the kids' table saying that it's not that important. And the science is telling us that it's actually demonstrably important.
Right. It's the thing you should put at the front.
As mentioned in the movie, video clip, okay, we've got the 3 stages of the day: the peak, the trough, and then the recovery. And most of us follow this pattern. And so when we arrive at work, we've got some energy, and this is a great time to do some of those analytical tasks. So this might be some of your spreadsheets, your data processing, okay, some of that brain power stuff. And then as throughout the day goes on, especially through lunch, you eat, your body slows down, some of that creative mental energy has gone down. This is a great time to do some of those administrative tasks like emails, phone calls, paperwork. And then as the day goes on, you'll recover and you've got a little more brain power available to you. This is a great time to do some of that creative tasks. Okay. All right. So it's important to take breaks. And I know in America, it's a sin. We can't stop working. Okay. We're notorious for not taking vacations, for not using our breaks. Other countries, Americans might judge them for being lazy or their productivity is down. The reality shows, though, that Americans are not as productive as other countries, and that's simply because we work more instead of working smarter. We don't take breaks. We don't give ourselves permission to do so, and it really is important to give yourself this transition so that you can come back to things. Now, research shows that your brain is much more available to you if you pause and take a break, especially if you mix that break with exercise. So in this slide here, you can see that we've got the brain here on the top, okay, after sitting quietly working on a task. Okay, imagine these are employees that came in for work. Now, if you go out for a walk, even 20 minutes around the block, look how many more employees showed up for you at work. Okay. Now we get afraid. We're scared of stepping away from the work. Okay, we may not have that motivation when we come back, but the research shows taking that break and coming back is much better for your productivity. You're going to have those new ideas. You're going to be able to finish it. Okay, give your brain a break so that you can come back and finish it. Okay, here's a video that Dan Ping provides about breaks.
There are all kinds of things. Number one is that if you think about the science of breaks, not too many years ago, people who stayed up all night were kind of heroes in the workplace because they were tougher than the rest of us. Then the science of sleep began emerging, and we said, no, those people are fools. I think the science of breaks is where the science of sleep was a decade ago, about to break through the surface as a really, really instructive about how we can work better. So we need to take more breaks, period. And one of the best things that I've done myself is that every day I have a break list. I write down 2 breaks I'm going to take during the day. We also know from the science that breaks are better taken with other people rather than solo, even for introverts like me. They're better taken fully detached rather than semi-detached. That is, don't bring your phone. We're better off moving during our breaks than being stationary. We're also better off being near nature. And so what the science is telling us is that if we take these regular breaks, 10, 15 minutes, we're going to feel better, we're going to perform higher. So make a break list. That's one of my favorite tips.
And go outside while you're doing
if you
taking
can,
a break.
if you can. But there's
walk.
even evidence that just looking out a window and seeing a tree is better than being in a windowless room.
Let me also ask you about teams, and because how timing works when you're working with lots of other people as well.
Yeah, well, there's some really, really interesting research on how teams synchronize, things like choirs, rowing teams, delivery services. And one of the things that it's so interesting about our nature is that it seems that coordinating with other people, being in sync and in time with other people, there's something fundamentally human about that, and we have a propensity for it. And one of the things that's so interesting about that, if you look at, let's take exercise as an example. Exercise is absolutely good for you, right? It boosts your mood. It's a prophylactic against depression. It helps control your weight.
All right, just to review, frequent short breaks are best. Doing breaks with others are beneficial. Getting up and walking around, and especially going outside, is the best way to take a break. Being fully detached from your work, not taking emails or paperwork with you. Step away, let your mind explore outside the box. And then if you can't take a break outside, giving your eyes a break. So look at something that's 20 feet away for 20 seconds. Try to do that every hour is recommended. Now this next tool or recommendation may not be feasible for some of you, but if you do have the opportunity with a lunch break or on the weekends or I was going to say the evenings, but that's where sleep comes in, okay? But yeah, sometimes we can take naps, and these are important. I'm going to play a little video clip here that shows how we've been doing it wrong and maybe some things to take away.
For most of my life, I hated naps. I would take them periodically, but I would wake up feeling terrible. I would feel like I had cotton balls in my head and my brain was all fuzzy. I would also be slightly ashamed of myself for napping. But then I discovered something important in this research. I was doing it wrong. Naps can be powerful. In many ways, naps are Zambonis for our brain. They smooth out all of the nicks and cuts in our mental ice that a day has left. So here's how to take a perfect nap. Number one, find a quiet space. I sit in a chair in my office. I put on noise-canceling headphones. Two, the best naps, the most productive naps, are extremely short, literally between 10 and 20 minutes long. Naps longer than that begin to create what's called sleep inertia, which is that groggy, boggy feeling that you experience. So what I do is I set my phone alarm for 25 minutes. Three, before I take that nap, this is going to sound weird, I have a cup of coffee. Stick with me on this. Then I close my eyes. I set the timer for 25 minutes. I can usually fall asleep now in about 10 minutes. So if my alarm goes off after 25 minutes, I've gotten a 15-minute nap. That's the ideal time for napping. But here's where it gets interesting. When I wake up after 25 minutes, it turns out that caffeine takes about that amount of time to get into our bloodstream. So I have the ideal nap length. I don't have that sleep inertia, and as I'm waking up, I get that second boost of caffeine. This is a technique, truly, it's in a lot of research papers. It's known as a nappuccino, and you should give it a try.
All right, so just a review, the perfect nap, find the time of your day when you're in that trough, create a calm environment to do so. Dan Pink recommends taking some caffeine. If you don't like caffeine, I would even recommend some water. The Native Americans used to do this to wake up early. They drink a lot of water, and then their body naturally needs to wake up. This might be something that you can do as well. And set a timer. He mentions 15 15 minutes. Okay, it can even be 25 minutes. Okay, just to give your brain a little refresh. It's like resetting the computer. All right. So hopefully today you've learned a few things that you can practice. Also some problem areas that you might experience. And I encourage you to think about some different ways that you can work. The expectations aren't going to slow down. The work's not going to slow down. But the way you work can change. And it's important to pause and just ask yourself, is this the most efficient way to do it? Can I adopt some new habits and some new ways to organize my time? It might take you some energy to set it up, but I encourage you to do so and look for the possibilities that can come your way and the benefits of just being more organized, having more time, less stress-free. And I hope you have a great day as you continue to better your life, your health, and the way you work. Thanks for joining us.